How's it going, little love bug? I'm gonna go through and read The Power of Myth with Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell. Now we're gonna start at chapter 1. We kind of went through the introduction before, but I think you fell asleep through a couple pieces of it. So just to give you a brief synopsis of it. Bill Moyers, which is who is with Joseph Campbell on this book, was a student of Joseph Campbell and has wrote this book after the passing of his mentor. Now, we're going to do the first chapter since we've already breezed through the introduction, which was quite long. Let's actually see how long this chapter 1 is. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me flipping through the pages, but it's going. Oh my God, bro. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay, chapter 1 is 43 pages long. Apparently, my friend has not heard of a slow reader. 5, 6, 7, 8. There are only 8 chapters in this book, and there are about 300 pages. So we'll make our way through, but it sounds like we will not be doing a full chapter today. I'm quite sleepy, so we'll go until I get beyond sleepy. So, I hope you're all tucked in. I hope that you're all snug like a little bug, all cuddled up. I wish I was there with you. And let's begin. Chapter 1. Myth and the Modern World. People say what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think that what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances within our own innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. Moyers says, why myths? Why should we care about myths? What do they have to do with my life? Joseph Campbell said, my first response would be, go on, live your life. It's a good life. You don't need mythology. I don't believe in being interested in a subject just because it's said to be important. I believe in being caught by it somehow or another. But you may find that with a proper introduction, mythology will catch you. And so, what can it do for you if it does catch you? One of our problems today is that we are not well acquainted with the literature of our spirit. We're interested in the news of the day and the problems of the hours. It used to be that university campus was a kind of hermetically sealed off area where the news of the day did not flip this page here, impinge upon your attention to the inner life and to the magnificent human heritage we have in our great tradition. Plato, Confucius, the Buddha, Goethe, and others who speak of the eternal values that have to do with the centering of our lives. When you get to be older, and the concerns of the day have all been attended to, and you turn to the inner life, well, if you don't know where it is or what it is, you'll be sorry. Greek and Latin and biblical literature used to be a part of everyone's education. Now, when these were dropped, a whole tradition of Occidental mythology information was lost. It used to be that these stories were in the minds of people. When the story is in your mind, then you see its relevance to something happening in your own life. It gives you perspective on what's happening to you. With the loss of that, we've really lost something because we don't have a comparable literature to take its place. These bits of information from ancient times, which have to do with the themes that have supported human life, built civilizations, and informed religions over the millennia, have to do with deep inner problems, inner mysteries, inner thresholds of passage, and if you don't know what the guide signs are along the way, you have to work it out yourself. But once this subject catches you, there is such a feeling from one or another of these traditions of information of a deep, rich, life vivifying sort that you don't want to give up. Moyers responded with, So we tell stories to try to come to terms with the world, to harmonize our lives with reality? Campbell says, I think so, yes. Novels, great novels, can be wonderful, instructive. In my 20s and 30s, and even in my 40s, James Joyce and Thomas Mann were my teachers. I read everything they wrote. Both were writing in terms of what might be called the mythological traditions. Take, for example, the story of Tonio. In Thomas Mann's Tonio Kroger, Tonio's father was a substantial businessman, a major citizen in his hometown. Little Tonio, however, had an artistic temperament. So he moved to Munich and joined a group of literary people who felt themselves above the mere money earners and family men. So here is Tonio, between two poles. His father, who was a good father, responsible and all that, but who never did the thing he wanted to in all his life. And, on the other hand, the one who leaves his hometown and becomes a critic of that kind of life. But Tonio found he really loved these hometown people. And although he thought himself a little superior in an intellectual way to them, and could describe them with cunning words, his heart was nevertheless with them. But when he left to live with the Bohemians, he found that they were so disdainful of life that he couldn't stay with them either. So he left them and wrote a letter back to someone in the group saying, I admire those cold, proud beings who adventure upon the paths of great and daemonic beauty and despise mankind, but I do not envy them. For if anything is capable of making a poet of a literary man, it is my hometown love of the human, the living, and ordinary. All warmth derives from this love, all kindness and all humor. Indeed, to me it even seems that this must be the love of which it is written, that one may speak with the tongues of men and of angels, and yet lacking love be as sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Okay, that was the end of the sentence, apparently. And then he says, The writer must be true to truth, and that's a killer, because the only way you can describe a human being truly is by describing his imperfections. The perfect human being is uninteresting. The Buddha who leaves the world you know. The Buddha who leaves the world you know. It is the imperfections of life that are lovable, and when the writer sends a dart of the true word, it hurts. But it goes with love. This is what man called erotic irony, the love for that which you are killing with your cruel analytical world. Bill Moyers said, I cherish that image, my hometown love, the feeling you get for that place, no matter how long you've been away, or even if you never return. That was where you first discovered people. But why do you say you love people for their imperfections? Campbell responds with, aren't children lovable because they're falling down all the time and have little bodies with the heads too big? Didn't Walt Disney know all about this when he did the Seven Dwarfs? And these funny little dogs that people have, they're lovable because they're imperfect. Bill Moyers says, perfection would be a bore, wouldn't it? Campbell says, it would have to be. It would be inhuman. The umbilical point? There's no way that's how you spell that. The umbilical point, the humanity, the thing that makes you human and not supernatural and immortal. That's what's lovable. That is why some people have a very hard time loving God, because there's no imperfection there. You can be in awe, but that would not be real love. It's Christ on the cross that becomes lovable. Moyers asks, what do you mean? Campbell says, suffering. Suffering is imperfection, is it not? Moyers says, the story of human suffering, striving, living, Campbell goes on, and youth, coming to knowledge of itself, what it has to go through. And you take a small sip of water. And hopefully you cannot hear this in detail. Okay. Back to Mr. Bill Moyers. Again, just to remind you of the dynamic, Bill Moyers is the student of Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell, again, Campbell, is the little mastermind behind the myth here. And Moyers is asking him questions as a student. Moyers says, I came to understand from reading your books, The Masks of God or The Hero with a Thousand Faces, for example, that what human beings have in common is revealed in myths. Myths are stories of our search through the ages for truth, for meaning, for significance. We all need to tell our story and to understand our story. We all need to understand death and to cope with death. And we all need help in our passages from birth to life and then death. We need for life to signify, to touch the eternal, to understand the mysterious, to find out who we are. Campbell says, people say that what we're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that that's what we're really seeking. I think that what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances within our own innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. That's what it's all finally about. And that's what these clues help us to find within ourselves. Moyer says, myths are clues? Campbell, myths are clues to the spiritual potentials of the human life. Moyers, what we're capable of knowing and experiencing within? Campbell, yes. Moyers, you changed the definition of a myth from the search for meaning to the experience of meaning? Campbell, experience of life. The mind has to do with meaning. What's the meaning of a flower? There's a Zen story about a sermon of the Buddha in which he simply lifted a flower. There was only one man who gave him a sign with his eyes that he understood what was said. Now, the Buddha himself is called the One Thus Come. There's no meaning. What's the meaning of the universe? What's the meaning of a flea? It's just there. That's it. And your own meaning is that you're there. We're so engaged in doing things to achieve purpose of outer value that we forget the inner value, the rapture that is associated with being alive, is what it's all about. Moyers, how do you get that experience? Campbell, reading myths. They teach you that you can turn inward and you begin to get the message of the symbols. Read other people's myths, not those of your own religion, because you tend to interpret your own religion in terms of facts. But if you read the other ones, you begin to get the message. Myth helps you to put your mind in touch with this experience of being alive. It tells you what the experience is. Marriage, for example. What is marriage? The myth tells you what it is. It's the reunion of a separated duad, D-U-A-D. It's the reunion of the separated duad. Originally, you were one. You are now two in the world, but the recognition of the spiritual identity is what marriage is. It's different from a love affair. It has nothing to do with that. It's another mythological plane of existence. When people get married because they think it's a when people get married because they think it's a long-time love affair, they'll be divorced very soon, because all love affairs end in disappointment. But marriage is the recognition of a spiritual identity. If we live a proper life, if our minds are on the right qualities in regarding the person of the opposite sex, we will find our proper male or female counterpart. But if we are distracted by certain sensuous interests, we'll marry the wrong person. By marrying the right person, we construct the image of the incarnate God. And that's what marriage is. Moyers, the right person? How does one choose the right person? Campbell, your heart tells you. It ought to. Moyers, your inner being. Campbell, that's the mystery. Moyers, you recognize your other self. Campbell, well, I don't know. But there's a flash that comes and something in you knows that this is the one. Moyers, if marriage is this reunion of the self, with the male or female grounding ourselves, why is it that marriage is so precarious in our modern society? Campbell, because it's not regarded as a marriage. I would say that if the marriage isn't the first priority in your life, let me back up. I would say that if the marriage isn't a first priority in your life, you're not married. The marriage means the two that are one, the two become one flesh. If the marriage lasts long enough, and if you are acquiescing constantly to do it, instead of to individual personal whim, you come to realize that that is true. That is true. The two really are one. Moyers. One not only biologically, but spiritually. Campbell. Primarily spiritually. The biological is the distraction which may lead you to the wrong identification. Moyers. Then the necessary function of marriage, perpetual or so, perpetuating ourselves? Sorry, it's like cut in half. Perpetuating ourselves in children is not the primary one. Campbell. No, that's really just the elementary aspect of marriage. There are two completely different stages of marriage. First, the youthful marriage following the wonderful impulse that nature has given us and the interplay of the sexes biologically in order to produce children. But there comes a time when the child graduates from the family and the couple is left. I've been amazed at the number of my friends who, in their 40s or 50s, go apart. They have a perfectly decent life together with the child, but they interpreted their union in terms of their relationship with their child. They did not interpret it in terms of their own personal relationship to each other. Marriage is a relationship. When you make the sacrifice in marriage, you're sacrificing not to each other, but to unity in a relationship. The Chinese image of the Tao within the dark and light interacting, that's the relationship of yin and yang, male and female, which is what a marriage is. And that's what you have become when you have married. You're no longer this one alone. Your identity is in a relationship. Marriage is not a simple love affair. It's an ordeal. And the ordeal is the sacrifice of ego to a relationship in which two have become one. Moyers. So marriage is utterly incompatible with the idea of doing one's own thing. Campbell. It's not simply one's own thing, you see. It is, in a sense, doing one's own thing. But the one isn't just you. It's the two together as one. And that's a purely mythological image signifying the sacrifice of the visible entity for a transcendent good. This is something that becomes beautifully realized in the second stage of marriage, what I call the alchemical stage of the two experiencing that they are one. If they are still living as they were in the primary stage of marriage, they will go apart when their children leave. Daddy will fall in love with some little nubile girl and run off, and mother will be left with an empty house and heart, and will have to work it out on her own in her own way. Moyers. That's because we don't understand the two levels of marriage. Campbell. You don't make a commitment. Moyers. We presume to. We make a commitment for the better or worse. Campbell. That's the remnant of a ritual. Moyers. And the ritual has lost its force. The ritual that once conveyed an inner reality is now merely form. And that's true in the rituals of society and in the personal rituals of marriage and religion. Campbell. How many people before marriage receive spiritual instruction as to what the marriage means? You can stand up in front of a judge and in 10 minutes get married. The marriage ceremony in India lasts 3 days. That couple is glued. Moyers. You're saying that marriage is not just a social arrangement, it's a spiritual exercise? Campbell. It's primarily a spiritual exercise, and the society is supposed to help us have the realization. Man should not be in the service of society. Society should be in the service of man. When man is in the service of society, you have a monster state. And that's what is threatening the world at this minute. Moyers. What happens when a society no longer embraces a powerful mythology? Campbell. What we've got on our hands. If you want to find out what it means to have a society without any rituals, read the New York Times. Campbell. Moyers. And you defined? Campbell. The news of the day, including destructive and violent acts by young people who don't know how to behave in a civilized society. Only the young people commit crimes. It's always the youth. Moyers. Society has provided them no rituals by which they become members of the tribe, of the community. All children need to be born twice to learn the function rationally in the present world, leaving childhood behind. I think of that passage in the first book of Corinthians. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put childish things away. Campbell. That's exactly it. That's the significance of the puberty rites. In primal societies, there are teeth knocked out. There are scarcifications. There are circumcisions. There are all kinds of things done. So you don't have your little baby body anymore. You're something else entirely. When I was a kid, we wore short trousers, knee pants. And then there was a great moment when you put on long pants. Boys now don't get it. I see even 5-year-olds walking around with long trousers. When are they going to know that they're now men and must put aside childish things? Moyers. Where do the kids growing up in the city, on 125th and Broadway, for example, where do these kids get their myths today? Campbell. They make them up themselves. This is why we have graffiti all over the city. These kids have their own gangs and their own initiations and their own morality, and they're doing the best that they can. But they're dangerous because their own laws are not those of the city. They have not been initiated into our society. Moyers. Rollo May says there is so much violence in American society today because there are no more great myths to help young men and women relate to the world or to understand that world beyond what it is seen. Campbell. Yes, but another reason for the high level of violence here in America is that America has no ethos. Moyers. Explain. Campbell. In American football, for example, the rules are very strict and complex. If you were to go to England, however, you would find that the rugby rules are not that strict. When I was a student back in my 20s, there were a couple of young men who constituted a marvelous forward passing pair. They went to Oxford on scholarship and joined the rugby team, and one day they were introduced the forward pass. And the English players said, "Well, we have no rules for this, so please don't. We don't play that way." Now, in a culture that has been homogeneous for some time, There are a number of understood, unwritten rules by which people live. There is an ethos there. There is a mode and an understanding. We don't do it that way. Moyers. A mythology. Campbell. An unstated mythology, you might say. This is the way we use a fork and knife. This is the way we deal with people, and so forth. It's not all written down in books, but in America, we have people from all kinds of backgrounds, all in a cluster together, and consequently, law has become very important in this country. Lawyers and law are what hold us together. There is no ethos. Do you see what I mean? Moyers. Yes, it's what de Tocqueville, oh my gosh, Tocqueville described when he first arrived here 160 years ago to discover a tumult of anarchy. All right, we are going to we're gonna call it a night on that one. I'm gonna tuck my little book. Oh boy, grabbing a little sip of water here. Not bad. It's very interesting. You know, it's always unique to hear other people's perspectives. Obviously, a lot of things, but I think what I got the most out of that, I was very interested in the marriage portion of that. Makes sense. But I'm curious, if you haven't fallen asleep and you picked up all that, what did you like? Alright, little love bug, I gotta brush my teeth now. And then go to bed. Oh my goodness, it's 1:26 and I'm quite tired.